The dust cloud on the horizon caught Nathan Fletcher's attention, just as the sun began its descent behind the western ridge, painting the Texas sky in shades of crimson and gold that seemed to set the whole world ablaze. He stood on the porch of his ranch house, 20 miles outside of Dallas, wiping the sweat from his brow with a worn handkerchief, his 26 years showing in the lines around his eyes from squinting against the relentless sun. The cloud grew larger, and he could make out a single figure stumbling more than walking, weaving like a drunk, but with the desperate urgency of someone running from death itself. Nathan set down the saddle he had been oiling and moved to the edge of the porch, his hand instinctively resting on the revolver at his hip, though something in his gut told him this was no threat approaching. The figure collapsed 20 feet from his door, crumpling like a marionette with cut strings, and Nathan was off the porch in seconds, his boots kicking up dust as he ran. When he reached the fallen form, he found a young woman, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, her dress torn and stained with what looked like dried blood that he hoped was not her own. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her skin burned red from the sun, and when he touched her shoulder to turn her over, she was burning with fever. He did not hesitate, scooping her into his arms and finding her lighter than she should be, all bones and determination that had finally given out. Her eyes fluttered open for just a moment, revealing the most striking hazel eyes he had ever seen, and she whispered something he could not make out before consciousness left her entirely. Nathan carried her into the ranch house, shouldering the door open and bringing her to his bedroom since it was the closest. He laid her on his bed, the clean quilts his mother had made years ago now cradling this stranger who had literally fallen into his life. He fetched water from the pump, cool and fresh from the well, and began to gently wipe her face and neck, trying to bring down the fever that radiated from her skin. She moaned softly but did not wake, and he could see now that she was young, probably around 22 or 23, with delicate features that would be beautiful once she recovered from whatever ordeal had brought her to his door. For 3 days, Nathan barely left her side except to tend to the most critical ranch work that could not wait. He brought in his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an older widow who had raised 6 children and knew her way around sick rooms. Together they cleaned the young woman up, changing her into one of Mrs. Patterson's borrowed nightgowns, treating the blisters on her feet that told the story of miles walked without proper shoes, and forcing water and thin broth between her lips whenever she showed signs of stirring. Mrs. Patterson clucked her tongue and shook her head, saying she had never seen someone so close to dying from sheer exhaustion and exposure. On the morning of the 4th day, Nathan was sitting in the chair he had pulled up beside the bed, his head tilted back against the wall in a light doze, when he heard a sharp intake of breath. His eyes snapped open to find the young woman awake, staring at him with those hazel eyes now clear and alert, though filled with confusion and fear. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, but the words were clear enough. "You are safe," Nathan said, leaning forward slowly so as not to startle her. "This is my ranch about 20 miles outside Dallas, Texas. You collapsed at my door 4 days ago. I am Nathan Fletcher." She tried to sit up, but her arms trembled with the effort, and Nathan gently pressed her shoulder back down. "Easy now. You have been through hell and back from the looks of it. You need to rest. 4 days. The panic in her voice was evident. "I have been here 4 days. You were burning with fever and half dead from exhaustion. What is your name? Is there someone I should send word to that you are alive?" The fear in her eyes shifted to something else, something darker. "No, there is no one." She paused, seeming to wrestle with whether to trust him. "My name is Amelia Harper, and I cannot stay here," They will be looking for me. Nathan felt his jaw tighten. Who will be looking for you? Amelia closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she had passed out again, but then she spoke, her voice filled with a weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. My uncle, or rather, the men he sent after me. I ran away from him in Fort Worth. He was going to force me to marry a man 3 times my age, a business associate of his who wanted a young wife to bear him sons. When I refused, my uncle locked me in my room and said I would marry him, or he would make sure I regretted it for the rest of my life. So I climbed out the window in the middle of the night and ran. How long have you been running? I left Fort Worth 8 days ago. I had a little money I had hidden away, enough to buy passage on a stagecoach heading south, but we were attacked by bandits 2 days outside of Fort Worth. They took everything, and in the chaos, I managed to slip away into the brush. I have been walking ever since, trying to stay off the main roads, drinking from streams when I could find them, eating berries when I dared to stop long enough to pick them. Nathan felt anger rising in his chest, not at her but at the circumstances that had driven this young woman to such desperate measures. Your uncle has no legal right to force you into marriage. You are old enough to make your own choices. Amelia laughed, but there was no humor in it. You do not know my uncle. He is a powerful man in Fort Worth, friends with the sheriff, with the judge, with everyone who matters. If he wants me found and brought back, they will do it, and they will not ask questions about what happens to me after. This is my land, Nathan said firmly. And no one is taking you from here unless you want to go. You are under my protection now. She looked at him with such surprise that Nathan realized she probably had not had many people stand up for her in her life. You do not even know me. Why would you risk trouble for a stranger? Because it is the right thing to do, Nathan said simply. And because I could not live with myself if I turned you out knowing what was waiting for you. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes, and she turned her face away, but not before Nathan saw them spill down her cheeks. He quietly left the room to give her privacy, his mind already working through what this meant. If her uncle was as connected as she said, there would indeed be men looking for her. But Nathan had not built this ranch from nothing by being timid, and he would be damned if he let some bully from Fort Worth come onto his land and take this woman against her will. Over the next few days, Amelia slowly regained her strength. Mrs. Patterson continued to visit daily, bringing food and clean clothes that she had altered to fit Amelia's slighter frame. The older woman had clearly taken a liking to the young refugee, and Nathan often heard them talking and laughing together in the kitchen while he worked outside. The sound of Amelia's laughter, when it came, was like nothing he had ever heard before, bright and clear and full of life that her ordeal had not managed to extinguish. When Amelia was finally strong enough to leave the bedroom, Nathan found her one morning standing on the porch, looking out at the land with an expression of wonder on her face. The bruises had faded from her skin, and in a simple blue dress with her hair clean and braided down her back, she was without question the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "It is so open here," she said without turning around. "So much space and sky." In Fort Worth, everything felt closed in, like the buildings were pressing down on me. Nathan joined her on the porch, keeping a respectful distance. "That is one of the reasons I love it out here. A man can breathe." "A woman too," Amelia said softly. She turned to look at him, and there was something in her eyes that made his heart beat faster. "Thank you, Nathan, for saving my life, for not asking too many questions, for just letting me be safe." "You are welcome here as long as you want to stay," Nathan heard himself say. "I could use help around the ranch if you are interested. Mrs. Patterson has been doing the cooking, but she has her own place to run, And there is mending and garden work and 100 other things that I never seem to have time for. You are offering me a job?" Amelia asked, and he could see she was trying to keep her voice neutral, but hope shone through anyway. "I am offering you a place," Nathan corrected. "A home if you want it. The pay would not be much, but you would have a roof over your head and food in your belly, and no one forcing you to do anything you do not want to do." Amelia's hand flew to her mouth, and for a moment Nathan thought he had overstepped, but then she was smiling, really smiling, and he felt warmth spread through his chest. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I would like that very much." The summer of 1876 moved forward with a rhythm that Nathan found himself settling into with surprising ease. Amelia proved to be a hard worker, rising early to prepare breakfast and keeping the house cleaner than it had been in years. She took over the vegetable garden that Nathan's mother had started before she passed, coaxing tomatoes and beans and squash from the stubborn Texas soil. She mended his clothes and learned to help him with some of the lighter ranch work, feeding the chickens and collecting eggs, helping to bring in the horses at night. But beyond the practical help, Nathan found himself simply enjoying her company. They would sit on the porch in the evenings after the work was done, watching the sun set and talking about everything and nothing. Amelia told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her parents dying from cholera when she was 16, about moving to Fort Worth to live with her uncle who had seemed kind at first, but had revealed his true nature only after she was completely dependent on him. Nathan told her about his own parents, his father who had started this ranch and died defending it from rustlers when Nathan was 21, his mother who had followed him to the grave just a year later from heartbreak and pneumonia. "It must have been lonely out here by yourself," Amelia said one evening, her voice soft in the gathering darkness. "It was," Nathan admitted, "but I did not realize how lonely until you got here. Strange how you can get used to being alone until someone shows you what it is like to have company again." He could not see her face clearly in the dim light, but he heard the smile in her voice when she replied, "I know exactly what you mean." It was inevitable, Nathan supposed later, that he would fall in love with her. How could he not? She was brave and kind and funny, with a sharp mind and a gentle heart. She sang while she worked, old songs her mother had taught her, and the sound filled the house with life. She learned to bake bread that rivaled anything his mother had made, and she listened when he talked about his dreams for the ranch with a genuine interest that made him want to build something even better. And when she looked at him, really looked at him, he felt seen in a way he had never experienced before. He tried to keep his feelings to himself, worried that she might feel obligated to return them given that he had taken her in and was providing for her. The last thing he wanted was for Amelia to feel trapped again, even in a different way. But it became harder and harder to hide how he felt, especially when she would touch his arm while talking, or when he would catch her watching him with an expression that made his breath catch. It was Mrs. Patterson who finally said something, pulling Nathan aside one day when Amelia was working in the garden. "Boy, if you do not tell that girl how you feel, you are a bigger fool than I took you for." Nathan felt his face heat up. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Do not play dumb with me, Nathan Fletcher. I have eyes in my head. You are in love with her, and unless I miss my guess, she is in love with you too. So what are you waiting for? She has been through so much," Nathan said quietly. "I do not want her to feel like she owes me anything. I do not want her to say yes to something just because she thinks she has to." Mrs. Patterson softened, patting his arm. "That girl is stronger than you think. She knows her own mind, and from what I can see, her mind is set on you, but you will never know unless you ask." It took Nathan another week to work up the courage, and in the end, It was not some grand planned moment, but rather something that happened naturally. They were in the barn together, Amelia helping him brush down his horse after a long day of riding fence lines. The sun was streaming through the gaps in the wood, creating bars of golden light, and there was hay dust floating in the air like tiny stars. Amelia laughed at something, her head tilted back, and Nathan felt his heart swell so full he thought it might burst. "Amelia," he said, and something in his tone made her turn to look at him, the laughter fading into something more serious. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She set down the brush she was holding, giving him her full attention. "I have tried to keep this to myself because I did not want to make you uncomfortable. And if you do not feel the same way, that is fine. I will never mention it again, and things can go on just as they have been. But I just cannot keep it inside anymore." The words were tumbling out faster than he intended, his usual calm composure deserting him entirely. "Nathan," Amelia said gently, and he realized she had moved closer to him. "Just say it." "I love you," he said, the words simple but weighted with every ounce of feeling in his heart. "I think I have loved you since the moment I saw you collapse at my door. I know it is fast, and I know you might not be ready for this, but I needed you to know. You have brought light into my life, Amelia. You have made this house a home again. And I do not want to imagine going back to the way things were before you got here." For a moment that felt like an eternity, Amelia just looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his face. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her features, so radiant that Nathan felt his knees go weak. "Nathan Fletcher, you foolish man. I have been in love with you for weeks. I kept waiting for you to say something, but you are so respectful and careful that I started to think maybe I was imagining the way you looked at me." "You love me?" Nathan asked, needing to hear it again to believe it. "I love you," Amelia confirmed. "I love your kindness and your strength. I love how hard you work and how you care for your animals and your land. I love the way you look at sunset and the way you talk about your parents with such respect and affection. I love that you saved me and asked nothing in return. I love you, Nathan, with my whole heart." Nathan closed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" "I wish you would," Amelia whispered, and then his lips were on hers and the world fell away. She tasted like hope and home and forever, her mouth soft and warm against his. Her hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, and Nathan wrapped his arms around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness melting away in the heat between them, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, the words leaving his mouth before he had consciously decided to say them. "I know it is fast, and I do not have much to offer except a ranch that barely turns a profit and a house that needs work, but I promise I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy. Marry me, Amelia." Amelia pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, her own shining with tears that Nathan hoped were the happy kind. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I do not care about money or a fancy house. I care about you, about building a life with you. Yes, Nathan, I will marry you." He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent, like she was something precious and breakable even though he knew she was made of steel and determination. When they finally left the barn, walking hand in hand back to the house, the sun was setting in that spectacular way it did out here on the plains, and Nathan felt like the luckiest man in Texas. They were married 3 weeks later in Dallas, in the small church on the edge of town with Mrs. Patterson and a handful of Nathan's friends from neighboring ranches as witnesses. Amelia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her make, with tiny flowers from the garden woven into her hair, and Nathan thought she had never looked more beautiful. The preacher was an old man who kept the ceremony short and sweet, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed Amelia with enough enthusiasm that Mrs. Patterson had to clear her throat meaningfully to get them to stop. The wedding supper was held at Mrs. Patterson's house since it was larger, and though it was not fancy, it was filled with warmth and laughter and genuine happiness. Nathan could not stop touching Amelia, his hand on her back or holding hers or brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, needing the physical confirmation that this was real, that she was truly his wife now. When they finally returned to the ranch house as the stars were coming out, Nathan carried Amelia over the threshold, making her laugh. "I am perfectly capable of walking, you know." "I know," Nathan said, setting her down gently in the main room. "But I have been wanting to do that since you woke up in my bed all those weeks ago." "Have you now?" Amelia's voice had gone low and a little breathless, and when Nathan turned to look at her, the desire in her eyes matched what he was feeling. "I have wanted to do a lot of things," Nathan admitted, moving closer to her. "Then maybe you should stop talking and start doing," Amelia said, reaching up to pull him down into a kiss that quickly turned heated. Nathan swept her up into his arms again, carrying her to the bedroom, their bedroom now, and kicked the door closed behind them. He had tried to make it nice, changing the sheets to the good ones and putting fresh flowers on the dresser, and the way Amelia's face softened when she saw his efforts made his heart clench. "You did all this for me." "For us," Nathan corrected, setting her down and beginning to undo the buttons on the back of her dress with hands that shook slightly despite his best efforts to stay calm. "Everything I do now is for us." Amelia turned in his arms, helping him with the buttons before starting on the buttons of his shirt. "I never thought I would have this," she said quietly. "A husband I actually love, a home where I feel safe, a future I want to wake up to. You gave me all of that, Nathan." "You gave me the same thing," Nathan said, pulling her close once her dress had pooled at her feet and she stood before him in just her slip. "I was going through the motions before you got here. I had forgotten what it felt like to actually want something beyond just surviving another day." They came together with a tenderness that spoke of love rather than just lust, learning each other's bodies with gentle touches and whispered words. Nathan tried to be careful, knowing that Amelia likely had little to no experience, but she was braver than he gave her credit for, urging him on, telling him what felt good, gasping his name in a way that made him feel like he was something special. When they finally joined together, Amelia tensed for just a moment before relaxing, and Nathan held still, kissing her face and telling her he loved her until she smiled and told him to move. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Amelia's head on Nathan's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I should probably tell you," Amelia said, her voice drowsy and content, "that I had another reason for wanting to marry you so quickly." Nathan felt a spike of worry. "What is that?" "I think my uncle gave up looking for me." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Mrs. Patterson has a friend who has family in Fort Worth, and apparently word is that my uncle told everyone I died from exposure after running away. He held a funeral and everything. I think he decided it was easier to claim I was dead than to admit he lost control of me." "That is awful," Nathan said, pulling her close. "I am sorry." "I am not," Amelia said firmly. "It means I am free. Really, truly free. He cannot come after me now without admitting he lied about my death, and even if he did, I am a married woman now. I am your wife, Nathan Fletcher, and no one can force me into anything I do not want anymore." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "You are safe, Amelia, I promise you that. I will protect you with everything I have." "I know," she whispered. That is why I love you." They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Nathan could not remember the last time he had slept so soundly. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Nathan's life. He and Amelia fell into a rhythm of partnership that felt natural and right. She was not content to just keep the house. She wanted to understand the ranch, to help make it successful. She learned to ride, though she never loved it the way Nathan did. And she kept the books, her neat handwriting recording every expense and bit of income with careful precision. She was better with numbers than Nathan had ever been. And under her management, they started to see actual profit for the first time in years. But it was not just the practical aspects of their partnership that Nathan treasured. It was the way Amelia smiled at him across the dinner table, the way she would come out to where he was working just to bring him water and steal a kiss, the way she fit perfectly against his side when they sat on the porch in the evenings. It was the sound of her humming while she cooked, and the way she read to him in the evenings from books she ordered from Dallas. It was waking up next to her every morning and falling asleep with her every night. They made love often, growing more comfortable and adventurous with each other as time went on. Nathan learned what made Amelia gasp and what made her laugh, discovered that she was ticklish behind her knees and that she loved it when he kissed her neck. Amelia became bolder, sometimes initiating things herself, and Nathan loved seeing her confidence grow. By November, Amelia started to suspect she might be pregnant. She did not say anything to Nathan at first, not wanting to get his hopes up until she was sure, but Mrs. Patterson took one look at her and knew. "You have got that glow," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "How long has it been since your last monthly?" 2 months, Amelia admitted. "And I have been so tired lately and certain smells make me feel ill. Do you really think I could be pregnant?" "I would bet my best laying hen on it," Mrs. Patterson said. "That is wonderful news, dear. Have you told Nathan?" "Not yet. I wanted to be sure first. What if I am wrong?" "Then you are wrong and you try again," Mrs. Patterson said practically. "But I do not think you are wrong. You should tell that husband of yours. He will be over the moon." That evening, Amelia waited until after dinner when they were sitting on the porch as had become their habit. Nathan had his arm around her shoulders, and she was tucked against his side, both of them watching the stars come out one by one in the vast Texas sky. "Nathan," Amelia said, her voice a little nervous, "I need to tell you something." Nathan immediately tensed, pulling back to look at her. "What is wrong? Are you all right?" "I am fine," Amelia assured him quickly. "Better than fine, actually. I am pregnant, Nathan. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her, his expression unreadable, and Amelia felt a flutter of worry. Then, suddenly, he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared every animal within a mile and picked her up, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are having a baby," Nathan said, setting her down and immediately looking worried. "Wait, should I have done that? Did I hurt you?" "Should you be sitting down, Nathan? I am pregnant, not made of glass," Amelia said, still laughing. "But yes, we are having a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy?" Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Amelia, I am beyond happy. You have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A wife I love more than life itself, and now a child. I do not have words for how happy I am." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Amelia felt tears slip down her own cheeks. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," Nathan said. "Both of you." The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia was sick most mornings for the first few months, and Nathan would hold her hair back and bring her water and crackers, worry etched into every line of his face. Mrs. Patterson was a constant presence, checking on Amelia regularly and providing advice that had been passed down through generations of women. As winter gave way to spring, Amelia's belly grew round, and Nathan became increasingly protective, barely wanting to let her do any work at all. "I am pregnant, not dying," Amelia said one afternoon when Nathan had literally taken a basket of laundry out of her hands. "I need to do something or I will go crazy." "You are carrying our child," Nathan said stubbornly. "I can do the laundry." "Nathan Fletcher, if you do not let me help around here, I swear I will hide all your socks," Amelia threatened, but she was smiling. They compromised, with Amelia doing lighter tasks and Nathan taking on more of the heavy work. He hired a hand to help with the ranch work so he could stay closer to the house. A young man named Sam who was good with horses and did not mind taking orders from a woman when Nathan was out riding the fences. In June of 1877, on a hot afternoon when the cicadas were singing their endless song, Amelia's labor began. Nathan immediately sent Sam to fetch Mrs. Patterson and the doctor from Dallas, though he worried the doctor would not make it in time. Mrs. Patterson arrived within an hour, taking one look at Amelia and sending Nathan out of the room. "But I want to be with her," Nathan protested. "And you will be," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "But right now you are going to pace and worry and make her nervous. Let me get things settled first, then I will call you back in. Go boil water and find clean towels. Give yourself something to do." The labor lasted through the night and into the next morning. Nathan was allowed back in the room, and he held Amelia's hand through the contractions, wiping her face with a cool cloth and telling her how strong she was, how proud he was of her. The doctor arrived just before dawn, but Mrs. Patterson was clearly in charge, and the doctor seemed content to let her handle things. When the baby finally came, arriving with the sunrise, the cry that filled the room was the most beautiful sound Nathan had ever heard. "It is a boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket and handing him to Amelia. "A healthy, strong boy." Amelia looked exhausted but radiant, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her face flushed. But when she looked down at their son, her expression was pure love. "He is perfect," she whispered. Nathan leaned over to look at the baby, this tiny person he and Amelia had created, and felt tears stream down his face without shame. "He is perfect," he agreed. The baby had a shock of dark hair and his eyes were scrunched closed, his little fists waving in the air. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Amelia looked up at Nathan. "I was thinking we could name him after your father." "What was his name?" "William," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "William Fletcher." "William," Amelia repeated, testing it out. "I like that. William Fletcher, welcome to the world." The baby seemed to settle at the sound of his mother's voice, and Nathan felt his heart expand to a size he had not known was possible. He kissed Amelia's forehead, then carefully pressed a kiss to William's tiny head. "Thank you," he whispered to his wife. "Thank you for him, for everything." "Thank you for giving me a life worth living," Amelia replied, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you for not letting go." Those first few months with William were challenging in ways Nathan had never experienced. The baby needed constant attention, and Amelia was exhausted from nursing and the broken sleep. But there was also joy in every moment. From William's first smile to the way he would grip Nathan's finger with his tiny hand. From the sound of his gurgles and coos to the weight of him sleeping on Nathan's chest. Nathan had never been particularly interested in babies before, but his son captivated him completely. He would spend hours just watching William sleep, marveling at the tiny perfect features, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. He learned to change diapers and swaddle and rock the baby to sleep, singing off key lullabies that his mother had sung to him. Amelia proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving even when she was so tired she could barely see straight. Mrs. Patterson helped where she could, but she had her own ranch to run. Still, she visited often, bringing food and offering to watch William so that Nathan and Amelia could get a few hours of uninterrupted rest. "You two are doing wonderfully, Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon, bouncing William gently while Amelia and Nathan sat at the kitchen table trying to stay awake long enough to eat the stew she had brought. "Being new parents is hard, but you are figuring it out." "I had no idea it would be this hard," Amelia admitted. "I love him so much it hurts, but I am so tired all the time." "It gets easier," Mrs. Patterson promised, "and harder in different ways, but easier too. Just remember to take care of each other, not just the baby." That evening, after William was finally asleep in the cradle Nathan had built, Amelia and Nathan lay in bed together, too tired to do anything but hold each other. "I miss you," Amelia said softly. "I know that sounds silly since we are together all the time, but I miss us. The way things were before." "I miss that too," Nathan admitted, "but I would not trade William for anything." "Neither would I," Amelia said quickly. "I just mean I miss having time to just be your wife and not just William's mother. Does that make sense?" "It does," Nathan said, kissing her temple. "How about this weekend we ask Mrs. Patterson if she will watch William for a few hours? We can go for a ride, just the two of us, like we used to do." "I would like that," Amelia said, already sounding drowsy. "I love you, Nathan." "I love you too," he replied, but she was already asleep. True to his word, Nathan arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch William the following Saturday. Amelia fretted about leaving him, but Nathan gently but firmly bundled her out the door and onto her horse. They rode out to a spot Nathan loved, a small grove of trees near a creek where the grass grew thick and green. They spread a blanket under the trees and lay in the shade, listening to the water and the birds and each other's breathing. "This is nice," Amelia sighed, her head on Nathan's shoulder. "I forgot what it felt like to just be still and quiet." "We should do this more often," Nathan said. "I know William needs us, but we need each other too." Amelia propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "When did you become so wise?" "I have always been wise," Nathan said with mock seriousness. "You just were too dazzled by my good looks to notice." Amelia laughed and swatted his chest. "You are ridiculous." "You love it," Nathan said, pulling her down for a kiss. It started playful but quickly deepened, and when Amelia pulled back, there was heat in her eyes that Nathan had not seen in months. "How much time do we have before we need to get back?" she asked, her voice low. "Couple of hours at least," Nathan said, his heart starting to beat faster. "Why?" Instead of answering, Amelia kissed him again, and Nathan decided questions could wait. They made love right there under the trees, slow and tender and reconnecting in a way they had not been able to since William was born. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the blanket, the sun filtering through the leaves to dapple their bare skin. "I needed that," Amelia admitted. "I needed to remember that we are not just parents, we are husband and wife too." "We will always be husband and wife first," Nathan promised. "William is the greatest gift you could have given me, but you are the love of my life, Amelia. That does not change." They stayed there until they absolutely had to leave, then rode back to the ranch house hand in hand. Mrs. Patterson took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly, but said nothing, just handed over a sleeping William and shooed them inside. As William grew from a baby into a toddler, the ranch prospered. Nathan had expanded his herd with some of the money they had saved, and the market for beef was good. Amelia's careful management of their finances meant they were able to make improvements to the house and the barn, to hire another hand during busy seasons, and to even start putting money away for William's future. More than the financial success, though, Nathan treasured the life they had built together. He loved watching Amelia teach William to walk, cheering as their son took his first wobbling steps from the couch to his mother's waiting arms. He loved seeing William's face light up when he came in from the fields, the way the boy would toddle over as fast as his little legs could carry him, calling Papa with absolute joy. He loved the family dinners around the table they had extended to accommodate a high chair, the bedtime stories, the lazy Sunday mornings when they would all pile into bed together and just be. When William was 2, Amelia told Nathan she was pregnant again. This time, he did not spin her around, mindful of their active toddler watching with wide eyes, but the joy was no less profound. The pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Amelia knew what to expect, and in the spring of 1879, they welcomed a daughter they named Margaret, after Amelia's mother. Margaret was a fussy baby, very different from William, who had been relatively easy once they got past the first few months. She did not like to sleep, and when she did sleep, the smallest noise would wake her. She nursed constantly and cried often, and there were nights when Nathan and Amelia took turns walking with her for hours, trying desperately to soothe her. "I do not remember William being this hard," Amelia said one night, tears of exhaustion streaming down her face as she rocked a screaming Margaret. "Every child is different," Nathan said, taking the baby so Amelia could rest. "We will figure her out just like we did with William." And they did, eventually. As Margaret got older, she became a happy, energetic child, always into everything, keeping them constantly on their toes. William adored his baby sister, and Nathan would often find the two of them playing together, William making Margaret laugh with silly faces and funny sounds. By the time William was 5 and Margaret was 3, the ranch was doing well enough that Nathan could afford to hire a full-time hand and take on some of the lighter duties himself. He was 31 now, and while he was still strong and capable, he also appreciated being able to spend more time with his family. Amelia was 28, more beautiful to Nathan now than she had been when she first collapsed at his door, her face showing the character that came from love and laughter and the challenges of raising children. One evening, after the children were in bed, Nathan and Amelia sat on the porch as they still did whenever weather permitted. Amelia was mending one of William's shirts, and Nathan was ostensibly oiling a bridle, but mostly he was just watching his wife, thinking about how lucky he was. "What are you looking at?" Amelia asked without looking up, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You," Nathan said honestly. "I was just thinking about the day you collapsed at my door, about how my whole life changed in that moment." Amelia set down her mending and moved to sit in Nathan's lap, something she still did even though they were well past the first blush of marriage. "My whole life changed too. You saved me, Nathan. In every way a person can be saved." "You saved me right back," Nathan said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I was just existing before you got here. You taught me how to really live again." "We saved each other then," Amelia said, kissing him softly, "and we built something beautiful together." "The most beautiful thing I can imagine," Nathan agreed. "A home full of love, children who are healthy and happy, a partnership that makes every day better. I would not change a single thing." "Not even the night Margaret screamed for 6 hours straight," Amelia teased. "Not even that," Nathan said firmly. "Because that night and every night like it is part of our story. The good and the hard and everything in between. I love our life, Amelia, I love you." "I love you too," Amelia said, resting her head on his shoulder. "More than I thought it was possible to love someone." They sat like that as the stars came out, the the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night around them. Inside, their children slept safely in their beds. The horses nickered softly in the barn. A coyote called in the distance, and another answered. It was the same Texas night it had always been, but it was also different, transformed by the presence of love and family. The years continued to pass, marked by the steady rhythm of ranch life and the milestones of their children growing up. William started attending the small school that had opened in Dallas, riding in with Nathan when he had business in town, and staying with a family friend during the week, coming home on weekends. It was hard for both Amelia and Nathan to have him gone, but they knew education was important and William loved learning. Margaret was too young for school yet, but she followed her mother everywhere, helping with the chickens and the garden, learning to cook and clean. She had inherited her mother's determination and her father's stubbornness, a combination that made her both delightful and exhausting. When William was 8 and Margaret was 6, Amelia found herself pregnant again. This time it was unexpected, as they had thought they were done having children, but the surprise quickly gave way to excitement. Nathan was thrilled at the prospect of another child, and William and Margaret were ecstatic about having a new brother or sister. The pregnancy was harder than the previous two, perhaps because Amelia was older now and had 2 active children to care for. She tired easily and had to give up many of her usual tasks, leaving Nathan and the hired hands to pick up the slack. Mrs. Patterson, now in her 60s but still spry, came by more often to help with Margaret and the housework. In the winter of 1882, on a cold December night, Amelia went into labor. This time Nathan was prepared, having sent for Mrs. Patterson and the doctor as soon as the contractions started. But the labor progressed faster than anyone expected, and the baby was born before the doctor could arrive, delivered by Nathan and Mrs. Patterson working together. "Another boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, handing the squalling infant to Amelia. "And he came into the world in a hurry." Nathan looked at his newest son, smaller than William had been but with the same shock of dark hair. "He is perfect," he said, kissing Amelia's sweaty forehead. "You are amazing." "What should we name him?" Amelia asked, cradling the baby close. They had not decided on names this time, too superstitious to plan too far ahead. Nathan thought for a moment. "What about James? It was my grandfather's name." "James Fletcher," Amelia said softly. "I like it. Welcome to our family, James." William and Margaret were allowed in to meet their new brother a little while later, both of them wide-eyed with wonder. William reached out a careful finger to touch James's tiny hand, and Margaret declared him the prettiest baby she had ever seen. Nathan and Amelia exchanged amused glances, knowing that Margaret had said William was ugly when she first saw him as a baby. James proved to be an easy baby, sleeping well and nursing without fuss. By the time he was a few months old, Amelia had regained her strength and was back to running the household with her usual efficiency. Nathan sometimes wondered how she did it, managing 3 children and all the work that came with a ranch, but Amelia seemed to thrive on the organized chaos of their life. The years that followed were full and rich. William grew into a tall, serious boy who loved learning and had a gift with animals. Margaret was all fire and energy, always singing or dancing or getting into some kind of mischief. James was the peacemaker, the one who could make everyone laugh and who seemed to navigate between his siblings with ease. Nathan and Amelia's love for each other only deepened with time. They still made time for each other, still stole kisses in the barn and held hands on the porch. They still talked for hours about their dreams and plans, still laughed at each other's jokes. They fought sometimes, as all married couples do, but they always made up, both of them committed to working through any problem together. When William turned 15, he told his parents he wanted to go to college in Austin to study veterinary medicine. It was 1887, and the world was changing rapidly. Nathan and Amelia had known this day would come, but it was still hard to imagine their son leaving home. Still, they were proud of his ambition and his intelligence, and they had saved enough money to send him. The day they took William to Austin, Amelia cried the entire way home. Nathan held her hand and let her cry, feeling his own heart heavy with the weight of their son's departure. But when they got back to the ranch and Margaret and James came running to meet them, full of questions about the trip, Nathan and Amelia shared a look. Their family was changing, growing up, but it was still their family, still the most precious thing in their lives. Margaret showed no interest in higher education, but she had a gift for training horses that was remarkable. By the time she was 13, she was working with the horses on the ranch, gentling them with a patience and skill that impressed everyone who saw her. Nathan was proud of her in a different way than he was proud of William, proud of her connection to the land and the animals, proud of her strength and independence. James, at 11, was still figuring out what he wanted to be, but he had his father's head for business and his mother's way with numbers. Nathan suspected he would end up running the ranch one day, but he did not push. There was time for James to find his own path. In the summer of 1890, William came home from college with a young woman he wanted his parents to meet. Her name was Sarah, and she was studying to be a teacher. She was smart and kind, and Nathan liked her immediately. Amelia was more reserved, as mothers often are when meeting the woman their son loves, but by the end of the visit, even she had to admit that Sarah was a good match for William. They married the following spring, a beautiful ceremony in Austin that the whole family attended. Watching his son get married, Nathan felt the passage of time like a physical thing. It seemed like just yesterday that William was a baby in his arms, and now he was a man starting his own family. But there was joy in it too, joy in seeing the young man his son had become, in welcoming Sarah into their family. A year later, William and Sarah gave Nathan and Amelia their first grandchild, a little girl they named Amelia after her grandmother. When they brought the baby to visit, Amelia held her tiny namesake with tears streaming down her face, and Nathan wrapped his arms around both of them, his heart full to bursting. "We are grandparents," Amelia said wonderingly. "When did we get old enough to be grandparents?" "We are not old," Nathan protested, though at 46 he was starting to feel the years in his joints on cold mornings. "We are experienced." Amelia laughed, the sound as bright and joyful as it had been when she was 22 and newly in love. "Experienced, I like that." Margaret got married when she was 19 to a neighboring rancher's son named Thomas, who shared her love of horses. It was a simpler wedding than William's, held right there on the ranch with half the county in attendance. Nathan walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle they had created in the yard, and when he placed her hand in Thomas's, he had to fight back tears. "Take care of her," he told Thomas quietly. "She is my little girl." "I will," Thomas promised. "I love her, sir. I will spend my life making her happy." And he did. Margaret and Thomas built a life on the neighboring ranch, close enough that Margaret could visit often, far enough that they had their own space. They had 4 children in rapid succession, and the sound of grandchildren's laughter became a regular feature of Nathan and Amelia's life. James stayed on the ranch, as Nathan had suspected he would. He married a woman from Dallas named Clara when he was 23, and they moved into a house Nathan and Amelia built for them on the other side of the property. James took over more and more of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, and Nathan was happy to step back and let his son lead. He had spent his whole adult life building this place, and it was satisfying to see it continue into the next generation. By the time Nathan was 55 and Amelia was 52, they had 8 grandchildren with another on the way. The ranch that Nathan had run by himself for so many years was now a family operation, with William's veterinary expertise available when needed, Margaret and Thomas's horse breeding business partnering with them, and James running the cattle operation with skill and vision. Nathan and Amelia spent more time on the porch than they used to, watching the sun set and remembering. Their hair was gray now, and Nathan's back ached more often than not, but they still held hands like newlyweds, still looked at each other with love that had only grown stronger over the years. "Do you remember the day we met?" Nathan asked one evening, the question coming out of nowhere. "Every detail," Amelia said. "I remember thinking I was going to die out there in the dust. I remember your face when I opened my eyes in your bed. I remember thinking I had been saved by an angel." "I was no angel," Nathan said with a laugh. "I was a lonely cowboy who did not know he was lonely until a beautiful woman collapsed at his door." "I was hardly beautiful at that moment," Amelia protested. "I was half dead and filthy." "You were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," Nathan said seriously. "And every day since then, you have only gotten more beautiful to me." Amelia leaned over to kiss him, soft and sweet. "I love you, Nathan Fletcher. Thank you for carrying me inside that day and never letting go." "Thank you for letting me hold on," Nathan replied. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Amelia. This life we built together, our children, our grandchildren, all of it, you made it all possible." "We made it possible," Amelia corrected. "Together." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding vows, the births of their children, and the building of their life together. Somewhere in the house they could hear James and Clara's youngest grandchild crying, and Amelia stirred to get up. "I should go see if Clara needs help," she said. Nathan caught her hand. "She has got it. Sit with me a little longer." Amelia settled back down, her head on Nathan's shoulder. "Just think," she said softly. "If I had not run away from Fort Worth, if I had not been stubborn enough to walk across half of Texas, if I had collapsed anywhere else but at your door, none of this would exist. Our children, our grandchildren, this life. It all hinged on that one moment." "Fate," Nathan said. "Or luck. Or maybe God knew what we both needed and put you on that path to me." "Whatever it was, I am grateful," Amelia said. "Every single day I am grateful." "Me too," Nathan agreed. They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold and Amelia started to shiver. Nathan stood, his knees creaking in protest, and helped Amelia to her feet. They walked inside together, still hand in hand after all these years, and closed the door on the night. In bed, they curled together as they always did, Amelia's back to Nathan's front, his arm around her waist. This position had remained constant through the years, a touchstone of their relationship. Nathan pressed a kiss to the back of Amelia's neck. "Good night, my love," he whispered. "Good night," Amelia replied, lacing her fingers with his. "I will see you in the morning." "Every morning for the rest of our lives," Nathan promised. And that was exactly what happened. Through the changing seasons and the passing years, through the joys and the sorrows that life brought, Nathan and Amelia faced it all together. They saw their children succeed and struggle, watched their grandchildren grow, and eventually welcomed great-grandchildren into the world. The ranch continued to prosper under James's leadership, and by the turn of the century, the Fletcher name was well known and respected throughout Texas. But more than the success of the ranch, more than the money or the land or the reputation, Nathan and Amelia were proud of the family they had created, of the love that bound them all together. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1896, their children and grandchildren threw them a party that took over the entire ranch. There was food and music and dancing, and at one point, William stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. They built this ranch from almost nothing, but more importantly, they built a family founded on love and respect and hard work. They showed us what a good marriage looks like, what partnership really means. They taught us to be kind, to be strong, to never give up on the things that matter. Everything we have, everything we are, we owe to them, to Nathan and Amelia Fletcher. To Nathan and Amelia, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Nathan looked at Amelia, saw the tears glistening in her eyes, and felt his own eyes well up. "We did good," he whispered to her. "We did very good," Amelia agreed. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the ranch was quiet again, Nathan and Amelia walked out to the spot where he had found her all those years ago. The land looked different now, with more buildings and fences, but the sky was the same, vast and star-filled and endless. "I collapsed right about here," Amelia said, pointing to a spot near the current fence line. "I remember looking up at your house and thinking it might as well have been a mile away." "I saw you from the porch," Nathan said. "I have thought about that moment so many times over the years. What if I had been inside and had not seen you? What if I had decided you were a threat and not come out? What if any one of 100 things had been different? But they were not," Amelia said firmly. "You saw me. You came to help. You carried me inside and you never let go. That is what matters." Nathan pulled her close, holding her in the same spot where he had picked her up off the ground 40 years ago. She felt different now, softer and more fragile, but she was still his Amelia, still the woman he loved more than his own life. "I will never let go," he promised. "Not as long as I am breathing." "And I will never want you to," Amelia replied. They walked back to the house together, their steps slower than they used to be but no less certain. Inside, they prepared for bed with the ease of long practice, each knowing the other's routine by heart. They climbed into bed and assumed their customary position, and Nathan thought, not for the first time, how lucky he was that Amelia Harper had collapsed at his door on that summer evening in 1876. The years continued to pass. Nathan and Amelia grew older but never grew apart. When Nathan was 68 and Amelia 65, Nathan's health began to decline. His heart was not what it used to be, the doctor said, and he needed to take it easy. But taking it easy was not in Nathan's nature, and he continued to do what he could around the ranch, though James had taken over all the heavy work years ago. Amelia worried about him constantly, fussing over him in a way that Nathan pretended to find annoying but secretly loved. She made sure he took his medicine, that he did not overexert himself, that he ate properly and got enough rest. She was still taking care of him, just as he was still taking care of her, their roles as caretaker and cared for fluid and interchangeable depending on what the other needed. On a warm spring evening in 1909, Nathan and Amelia were on the porch, as they had been thousands of times before. Nathan was feeling particularly tired, but he did not want to go inside yet. The sunset was spectacular, the kind that made him believe in divine beauty, and he wanted to share it with Amelia. "You remember our first kiss?" he asked, the question surprising him even as he said it. "In the barn," Amelia said immediately. "You asked permission first." "I thought that was very proper of you." "I did not want to presume," Nathan said. "Even though I loved you so much I thought I would burst with it." "I loved you too," Amelia said. "I think I loved you from the moment I woke up and saw you sitting beside my bed, looking at me like I was something precious." "You were precious," Nathan said. "You are precious, the most precious thing in my life." Amelia reached over and took his hand. "We have had a good life, Nathan. Better than I ever dreamed was possible." "The best life," Nathan agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I am tired, Amelia, really tired." She looked at him, and he saw understanding in her eyes, along with sorrow and love and acceptance. "I know," she said softly. "Do you want to go lie down?" "In a minute," Nathan said. "I just want to sit here with you a little longer." They sat in silence, hands clasped, watching the sun disappear and the stars begin to emerge. Nathan felt a strange peace settling over him, a sense of completeness. He had lived a full life, had loved and been loved, had built something that would continue after he was gone. His children were settled and happy. His grandchildren and great-grandchildren would carry on the Fletcher name and the values he and Amelia had instilled in them. It was enough. It was more than enough. "Amelia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, my love, thank you for everything, for saying yes, for building this life with me, for loving me all these years. Thank you." Amelia was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for saving me," she said. "Thank you for carrying me inside and never letting go." Nathan smiled, squeezed her hand one more time, and then felt himself slipping away, peacefully and without pain, surrounded by love and holding the hand of the woman who had been his whole world for 33 years. Amelia sat with him for a long time after he was gone, holding his hand and talking to him, telling him stories of their life together, reminding him of all the joy they had shared. When James finally came to check on them and found his father gone, he held his mother while she cried, and then helped her inside. Nathan's funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Texas. All their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren were there, along with neighbors and friends and business associates. Amelia sat through it dry-eyed, having cried all her tears in private. She stood at the graveside and said her final goodbye to the man who had been her salvation, her partner, and her great love. Without Nathan, Amelia felt untethered, like a kite with a broken string. But she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, making sure she was never by herself unless she wanted to be. They took turns staying with her at the ranch house, bringing their children and grandchildren, filling the space with life and noise. Amelia lived for another 5 years, seeing her youngest great-grandchild born, attending 2 more weddings, and watching the ranch continue to thrive under James's leadership. She told stories about Nathan to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive and vibrant. She sat on the porch every evening, sometimes talking to the empty chair beside her, sometimes just sitting in silence. On a June evening in 1914, Amelia asked Margaret to take her to the spot where she had collapsed all those years ago. Margaret helped her mother walk to the place, now well inside the ranch property, and stood quietly while Amelia looked around. "This is where it all started," Amelia said softly. "Where your father saved my life and changed it forever. I was so scared and so tired, and then there he was, like an answer to a prayer I had not known I was praying." "He loved you so much, Mama," Margaret said, her own eyes wet with tears. "I know," Amelia said, "and I loved him, still love him, always will love him." She turned to Margaret. "Take me home now. I am ready." That night, Amelia went to bed in the room she had shared with Nathan for so many years. She could feel him there with her, could almost hear his voice saying good night the way he had thousands of times before. She closed her eyes, a smile on her face, and slipped away peacefully in her sleep. They buried her next to Nathan, under the big oak tree on the hill overlooking the ranch. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, they inscribed the words, "She collapsed at his door. He carried her inside and never let go. Together forever." The Fletcher Ranch continued for generations after that, passing from James to his children and then to theirs. The story of Nathan and Amelia became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The spot where Amelia had collapsed was marked with a simple stone bench, and it became tradition for Fletcher couples to go there on their wedding day and promise each other the same unwavering devotion that Nathan and Amelia had shown. More than 100 years later, their great-great-great-grandchildren still run the ranch, still live in the house that Nathan built and Amelia made into a home. The original buildings have been expanded and modernized, but the bones of it are the same. And every evening when the sun sets over the Texas plains, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, you can almost imagine a young couple sitting on the porch, hands clasped, looking out at the land they loved and the life they built together, a testament to the enduring power of love, faith, and never letting go.